All right. Good morning, everyone. It's 9:30. Let's open the portal. All right, here we go. Okay, so the timer has started. Good. Just waiting until everyone is here. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How is everyone doing?
Hello, sir.
All right. Good morning. How are you doing?
Okay, sir.
All right. So I'm very proud of you guys, as I always say. I'm very proud of you. So today, all right, we're just gonna talk and review everything that we've been doing so far. So as you can see, I have the topics, decimals, percentage, fraction. Oh, that's a need to be edited. Fraction, ratio, and we're just gonna go through step by step everything to review what we've been doing. Okay. So let me wait one more moment. Until everyone is here. Meanwhile, let me fix this. All right. So if you want, you can write down these as your topics for the exam. But everything that you see in bolded, those will not be on the exam because those haven't been taught. So, for example, if you see decimals, the terminating decimals and recurring decimals, you would not write them because you're not going to be on the exam. But everything else we've talked about place values, addition, multiplying, dividing, and writing it as a percentage. So, write those as your topics until everyone is here, then we'll get started. Understand? All right. So, this is the time for you to talk up and tell me, right? Not to intimidate you, but for you to tell me where do you feel comfortable and any issues you are having. This is a period for that. So this class will be designated to review everything that we've been doing, right, and help you understand anything else that you might not really feel comfortable with. All right. So let's wait a moment. Right. So like Harry is doing, you can just take a picture of it. So I'll scroll down for you, Harry. All right, there you go. So here's percentage. So those are topic.
Hello, sir.
Hello, good morning. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
How you doing? So
Good.
these are the topics for your exam, and I was just repeating myself to say everything that you see that's bolded will not be on the exam because we haven't reached that topic. So for example, let's go back on decimals, right?
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. We talked about place values, adding it, multiplying it, dividing it, but we didn't talk about terminating it or recurring it. So those two topics on the decimals will not be on your exam, right? So what you can do is just to take a picture, right, of the topics instead of writing it. If you have a phone, let's quickly take a picture of each part that I'm scrolling down. Percentage.
Okay, sir. Wait, hold on. So
All right.
wait, the ones in so decimals only.
All right. So let me pause it there, and then so let me just talk about place values while you're taking a picture. So can anyone remind me, right? How many parts is a decimal number divided into?
A decimal number divided into? What
Yeah.
do you mean by that?
Like if I told you that you got 5.5% on an exam, right? What are the two parts of that number? 5 separated by a decimal and 5. What is the 5 on the left hand side? What value is it? All right. So this is why it's good to go back. All right. Let me write the number for you. Let me write the number. Just look at my screen for me. I'm scrolling. So let's pause for a second. So has everyone taken down the topics for decimals?
The topics for decimals, yes, sir.
All right. Here's the topics for percentage. So let's talk about decimals, right? When you get a number such as 90.2, right? The 90 is what type of number? Is it a fraction or is it a whole number?
Whole number.
right? And the 2, is it a fraction or is it a whole number? Fraction, right? So how many parts are in a decimal number? 2, right? And what are they?
The number 5 and 5.
Right, the whole number and the fraction, correct. Now, what I want you to understand is that there are increments or different values that are on the whole numbers, such as ones, right? So if someone told you that you got 1%, right, your value is in the ones column, right? Can anyone tell me any other place value heading, such as tens? Any other? So I gave you 2 examples. So if you got 1%, that would be in the ones column. If you got 10%, that would be in the tens column. Can you repeat?
I wasn't hearing you.
Okay, let me start over. So we're trying to now look at what the place value can be. So I'm saying, what if you got 5% on an exam, right? That 5% would be in the ones column, correct? That 5, the 5 is only has one value, correct? So it only be ones column.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, what if you got 50%? How many values do you have? 2. Right? So that would be in the tens column. So I'm under the impression that you would have discussed this already with your teacher, the one that preceded me, right? In early September. So did you guys talk about place values?
Yeah, we did.
Right. So you know the different values that come under place values. So continue this trend for me. Ones, tens, hundreds. Ones, tens, Thousands, all right, thousands, okay. Right, let me give you another hint. 100,000s. What comes after 100,000s? Millions. Okay, good. So you guys are there. All right. So I will expand further on this because I want to make sure you understand. So after the exam, though, I'll go more in depth with place values, right? So the most common ones you'll get introduced to is ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 100,000s, and millions. Okay. No, that's place value. So let's go back up. So let me so these examples I just wrote: ones, tens, hundreds.
Sir, I didn't finish taking the picture.
Oh, my bad. All right. So that was place values. Okay. Now, let's say you got 2 exams to do, right? And the teacher told you that in order to know the overall grade, right, the total amount of grades that you got, you are to add those 2 values, right? So let's say they gave you 50 on one exam and then another 50 on the other exam, right? How would you combine both of them? Anyone remembers? To combine 2 decimals, we said that you add them. You remember? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Right. So if you got 2 papers and you want to add them together, like you got 55.0 and you got 50.0 on the other end, right? To add those 2 decimal numbers together, right? You use the principle of addition. Remember that. So you know how to add and subtract decimals, correct? Guys.
Yes, sir.
Right. So do you guys know how to add and subtract decimals?
Yes, sir.
Good. Right. Okay. Now the third topic underneath decimals was to multiply a decimal by a multiple of 10. Okay? And multiples, so let's scroll down. Let's take up look at the pause. Multiples of 10, I told you, were simply any value such as 10 that have additional powers on beside it as well. So let's say 10, 100, 1,000. Those are multiples of 10, correct? Correct. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, I gave you an example in the previous classes, such as 10, and when you multiply a number such as 0.3 by 10, what did I say happened to that 0.3?
You move the decimal point
Right? To the left or to the right?
to the right.
Right. So that would give us a value of 3, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. So that was multiplying by a multiple of 10. And if we had 100 in this case, so let's say we got 100 to multiply that 0.3 by, we would have gotten the decimal place to move to the right how many times? Twice.
Sir,
Right? If we had 0.3 and that is multiplied by 100, how many times would we be moving that decimal point to the right?
2 times.
2 times. So that would be 30. Okay. All right. So let's go back up. That was multiplying a decimal by a multiple of 10. Now, multiplying a decimal by a decimal. Okay. So what if we didn't get to multiply that number by 100 or 10? What if it was actually just 1.1, something like that? In the previous classes with your other teacher, did he go through multiplying decimals?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Right. So we would, even though you said yes, I'll still be a little precautious with that. Right. The next step now. So we finished with addition, subtraction, and multiplication. It is now dividing by a multiple of 10. Right. So let's use that same scenario of 0.3. Let's scroll back. But what if now we don't want to know how big the value will get after we multiply it? What if we want to know how small the value will get because we're dividing it by a multiple of 10? So let's say we said 0.3 divided by 10. Do you move the decimal point to the right or do you move it to the left?
To the left.
Right? So there, that means that we would still put the decimal point to the right there, but what will happen now to a 0 there? The 0 will get moved behind the decimal point, correct? So it'll be 0.03. Everybody understand?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So is 0.03 smaller or larger than 0.3? Right. So therefore we can say when multiplying decimals by a power of 10, they become larger. When dividing a decimal by a power of 10, they become smaller. So that's the rule. Everybody understand?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So we're going along in good fashion. Now, the next topic underneath that was dividing a decimal now by a decimal. And you said that you got introduced to multiplying a decimal by a decimal. So was it the same for division? Did you learn how to divide a decimal by a decimal?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
All right, good. Now, as I said before, we aren't touching these two topics, right? Terminating decimals and recurring decimals until after the midterm, right? So those topics you don't have to pay attention to as of yet. Now, the last topic underneath decimals to prepare for your exam was to decimal as a percentage, okay? And I used a good example in previous classes where I said, what if your teacher did a 360 and said, you know what, I'm not going to tell you your marks on the exam. I'm going to tell it as a decimal. So what if they said you got 0.6 on an exam, right? Does anyone remember what we said the steps were to convert that to decimal? Convert it to percentage. Okay, multiply by 100. Okay, so that's correct. But I want you to make a relationship between the word percentage and why you use 100. So let me write out the word percentage. Okay, now look closely at this word. What does the word per mean? If you go, if you say, for example, per every exam, I get such and such. So per means based on each value, right? You understand that? So for based on each thing, you do something else. That's what the word per means. So we're breaking down why we use 100 in this case. So let's highlight the word per. Let me go down. Look for me. Right. So 0.6 multiplied by 100 now will tell you the percentage. But let's understand why in that word percentage it tells you it's 100. Okay. PER. If you look up the definition for the word PER, it basically means for every. Understand?
Yes, sir.
So if your teacher said per the request of this class, so they mean per every class. So in this case, when we say percent, we mean every 100. So every 100th place, we're gonna move the decimal. So if it was 10th place, we would not move it to a decimal because we want a percentage. If it was a 10th place, we would say per tenthage. We want cent. Cent means 100. So that's the next word we need to break down. Right? If your grandparent went to a centennial, they went to 100 years old. So that's not how you break down to understand why you multiply 100 to get your marks as a percentage when it was a decimal. Everybody understand?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. So that's the final topic on the decimals. Well, besides the two topics that we're not going to go through until after midterm. Now we move on to percentage, right? We just introduced it, but we're moving on to this percentage to summarize. And we said that percentages can be written as a fraction or mixed number, right? And to go and highlight that, I want you to go on page in your book 2, to go on page, one moment. So I want to reference the book as much as possible. Right. Okay, so go on page 137 in book 2. So let me write it down. Page 137, book 2. We're gonna summarize what we learned about expressing it as a fraction. So percentage to fraction. The red one? You don't have that one. That's the one that's on the book list. So if any case, I'll take a picture of the notes and send it. But you need to get the red one because that's the one that was prescribed on the book list. The volume one, I do have a copy of the volume one, but I've been told to not use that volume one as much because that isn't the one that's prescribed by the school. So the red one or the Oxford one, because I'll start to use the Oxford one even more, but the red one or the Oxford, right, or the study guide should be the ones that you use mostly because those ones are up to date. But I'll still provide you the book one until you get the book 2. Okay? Now, percentage of fractions, if you don't have the book, 137.
What does book 2 look like, sir?
This one. This is the one that's on the book list.
You have that one.
You have the volume 1, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Wait, sir, can I see that book again?
Right.
The book 2, the other one?
Is
I
it?
think I might have that one.
Yeah.
I'll have to check.
So this is the one that the school is recommending that I teach out of because it's the recommended and prescribed book. The volume 1 is not a case where it's bad. It's just that this one is up to date and I've been instructed to teach more out of this one. Right.
So, which page can this be found in?
In book 2? No, in volume 1.
No, in this book.
In volume 1, give me one moment. Let me check it. One moment. All right. So you're gonna go for me. If you have the volume 1, right? Let me tell you.
I called you misbehave, sir.
Give me a moment. Let me just search for the page for you in the volume 1. Okay, so you're gonna go for me on page. I'm just buying time until I find it. One moment. Okay, percentage. Let me look for it. PMOP percentage. Okay, go on page 87. Page 87. Okay. Page. So if you have the volume 1, which is this one. Yeah. If you have this one, go on page 87.
I'm on sir.
All right, good. Okay, so it says, even in the definition, it says, okay, so on page 87 or on page 137, which is in the book 2, right? The definition of a percentage. Repeat?
What's it gonna do on page 87?
Right, you're gonna follow along with me where it says percentage of a quantity. Follow along with me. Okay, so let me scroll back down. Okay, wait 1 moment. Okay,
When is the math test, sir? Since you don't have a timetable, sir, when is the math test?
your form coordinator will publish the exact date, right? But as I said to you before, if they haven't published the date by
Giving us the timetable.
right, so that's what I'm saying. If they haven't published a timetable, I will go forward and make the exam be next week Monday.
On Monday.
Right. If they haven't told me otherwise.
I have a question, sir. It's like, well, they don't publish the timetable by this evening, sir.
My exam will be slated for Monday. Okay, let's continue. So on page 87, it says a percentage is a fraction who has a denominator of 100. Okay, so you see now why I was telling you that the root word of percentage gives you some highlight as to why you use 100, because the denominator of a percentage at all times is 100. So if you want to represent now a decimal as a percentage, that 0.6 now will turn to 60 divided by 100. Everybody understand?
Yes, sir.
And that will be called 60%. 60 per 100. Okay, good. Now, I want to give you an example for you to do. So write this down for me. Just one quick example. I'm going to do one quick example. Right? Let me write it down. What is 30% of $600? So we're moving from test scores now. We're looking at real world applications. So I want to quickly give you this example of calculating percentage of money. But these topics will be going in depth after the midterm. But I wanted to introduce you to every topic, because it wouldn't make sense for me to just go in depth with one topic and that's everything on the exam. That wouldn't be that would be serving justice to everything. So that's how I go introduction to everything, and then after the midterm now I go in depth to each topic. Okay, now let's go a little bit in depth with percentage and understand how to calculate a percentage of, for example, currency, money. So write this for me. Okay, so let's restructure 30%. What did I say 30% can be written as?
30 over 100.
30 divided by 100, right? And the root word of, right? Whenever you hear, so let's write it to me. When you see the word of in mathematics, it means multiplication. Right?
Sir, I said, well, it has to be $180.
Right, you are correct. And I want to know how you got that, but give me 1 moment. So we're breaking down.
Just show you how I got it.
1 moment. So we're breaking down the question. So the question said, what is 30% of 600? So you're turning this question into math formula. So firstly, you rewrite the 30% as a fraction, 30 divided by 100. And I just told you that of means multiplication. So you're going to put a multiplication symbol there, right? And then you just write back the 600, the 600. Okay? Now the next step, now that you have that in a math format, right? The next step is to simplify. Is there any value, right, that share anything in common? Look closely at the denominator 100 and the value 600. Do they have anything in common?
I think so, it does.
It can both be divided by 100.
Correct. So if two things have something in common, right, they essentially will get smaller. For example, let me show you. If you have 20 and another person have 20, you can simplify to say both of you just have one of one thing. right? That's simplifying. You're just getting the basics or the essential understanding of what the person is telling you. So if you got both values having divisible by 100, that means you can just take off the 100. Understand? So that would end up being 30 divided by 1 multiplied by what? 6. Everyone see how I got that?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me go slowly again. How many zeros are on 100?
2.
All right, how many zeros are on 600?
2.
So we're going to write this rule. Whenever you have a fraction, right, that have the same amount of zeros, they can be simplified. So in the case of 30 divided by 100 multiplied by 600, because they have the same amount of zeros, you can simplify to say simply 30 multiplied by 6. About 30 multiplied by 6, because 30 divided by 1 is the same thing as just 30, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this now is a simplified method of writing the step above. And that's always the goal. Always try to simplify your work, right? To ensure you don't make any mistakes, because we are human and I understand that. So that's why the first step would always be to look if the things can be simplified firstly before you work them out. Because now look at it.
Refuse to simplify the work.
All right, let me answer that question. If you refuse to simplify the work, you leave room for error. That means you can easily make a mistake because you're dealing with so many numbers, right? So if you were dealing with 30 divided by 100, first of all, you had to calculate, well, let's represent that 30 divided by 100 as a decimal and all these things going on, because there are so many roots to work with this 30 divided by 100, because you could have just said, well, simply that's 0.3, right? And then multiply. But what if you incorrectly wrote that decimal, right? What if you said it was 0.03? Then that is where the room for error comes in now, because really the value isn't 0.03, it's 30. Understand? So
I have a question.
uh-huh.
Which exercise should we do in the gray maths book, sir?
All right, so in the gray maths book, so what I'll do, I'll give each person that have the different books separate exercises to do, right? So in the gray math book, to prepare for percentage section, you're going to do exercise 3U. So for persons who have the book one, do exercise. I do exercise 3U, right? Questions 2, 3. Right, questions 2, 3. Give me one moment.
I have a question, sir. Should we do this afternoon? Our notebooks that submit it to the portal.
Right, because remember, every day you get tasks. So when you do this, you're gonna submit on the portal. So you're gonna do questions 2, 3, and 15. Question 15 is on the next page, where it says calculate the value of 15% on $350. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Right. Those 3 questions you're gonna do to practice percentage. That's the volume 1. Can you repeat?
What if you are dealing with millions of dollars, sir, and don't divide the millions of dollars properly between friends, sir? What will happen to you, sir? Will the difference A report to the police, B survive
That's a good question. I can tell that your profession is gonna be someone that's very critical. So that's good observation. So when you have that type of situation, right, you have persons that handle it, and probably you can be one of those persons, right, where you check for error. So that sounds like a good profession for you. But for the persons that have the red book now, right, here's your exercise. You're gonna go on exercise 7B, right, and complete questions 2, right, 3, okay, and 9. Right, and I'll quickly go through another example to help the persons with the book too. But let's move on. So 30 multiplied, so let's continue right here. 30 multiplied by 6 will give us, so 3 times 6. Remember your times table? So you can simplify this to say 3 times 6 is?
18.
Right? And because we have an additional 0 on the 3, we just add a 0 on the answer. So 3 times 16 is 18, and you add a 0 to that will make it?
180.
Correct. And that's correct. The answer is equal to 180. So that is an example as to how to calculate percentage of money. So you would, if you would essentially have $180 if you had 30% of $600. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Uh-huh. Right. So while you think of a question, let's quickly do another example. So what if now you had the book 2?
What if you had, let's say, 50% of $27?
Mm-hmm.
But you, sir, do you panic, you be trying to work it out, that you see, just do it in a different method.
You can do it in a different method, but again, just always try to ensure that you ask for help. There's always a scenario where students feel like they're the only person doing the classwork, but no, you have WhatsApp group chats to help each other. So if you have a problem, if I can't help you, because I will always try to help you, send the message in the group chat and someone will reply because they might be having the same issue. Understand?
Okay, but when you tell your business, like, what if you had 15% of $27, sir? What do you do, sir?
Let's quickly work out that. So 15 divided by 100, right? Multiplied by 27, you said? Right. So let's look at this, everyone. So look at my screen, 15 divided by 100. So 15% is just 50.
I'm seeing it, sir.
Look at my screen right there. It's right there. Page 137, book 2, underneath that. It's right there. Do you see it? There you go. Right here. Let me brighten it. Oh no. Look at my screen quickly because we have to move on, but quickly look at my screen. So he's saying, what if you have 15% of 27, right? That 15% can simply be 15 divided by 100, and then you work it out. But what if you don't know how to work out this fraction as well? You can convert that fraction to a decimal, and then you work with just decimals. That's the beauty of percentages. You can either turn it to a fraction, right? And if you can't simplify it, you then turn it to a decimal. So in this case, this would have given us 0.15 multiplied by 27. Is that easier to work with now compared to the 15 divided by 100?
It's easier to work out with, sir.
Right. So that's essentially the same step. So if you can't work with fractions because you can't find a simplification, you can just convert that fraction to a decimal, and then that's easier to work with the calculator. All right, let's quickly move on to what if you had a question that's asking you to find the percentage of a number, right? So they didn't give you any percentage. So write this for me. What if we were given 4 divided by 5 and we need to find the percentage? No. Okay? What if we're given 4 divided by 5 and we need to find the percentage of this? But there's something weird about it. We don't have any percentage underneath the 5, correct? You only see 4 divided by 5. So how would we solve this? Let's show you. So when we are given these types of numbers, we're going to declare our unknown percentage as X. Any random letter, but let's make sure it's an unknown value such as X. Everybody there?
I have a question, sir. Is it 4.05?
Wait, no. That's incorrect. Just listen to me. We need to find the percentage. We need to find the unknown percentage.
No, so not for that one, the 15 over 15%.
Oh, yes, that was correct. My bad. Yes, that's the correct answer. So, is everyone here along the steps with me where we said we're given a fraction and we need to find the percentage in that fraction, right? Is everyone there?
Yes, sir.
So let me give you an example of a percentage of a fraction. What if you had a half? That half is 50% because it's literally half of 1. Everybody understand that?
Yes, sir.
Right. But what if now we're given, for example, I just feel in a bad mood and I gave you a fraction, just 4 divided by 5, and you need to find the percentage equivalent to that. Let's go to the steps. The first thing you need to understand is that that percentage is unknown. So you call it.
So it would have to be 80%.
Hold on one moment, Khalil. So we call it X. Any random letter, but in math, we'd like to use X. Right? So we're going to say now.
X is more right, because X is more perfect than any other letter, right? So.
Right, okay, you can say that. Okay, you can say that. So essentially, remember that percentages, since it's unknown, it still has to be over 100. So it's going to be X divided by 100. Everybody understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And same step like we did previously, where we said the percentage is equal to $600. We're simply going to say this percentage is equal to 4 divided by 5. Same step. Okay? Now, in this step, you're going to ask yourself, well, sir, is there anything in common with this? And how do I go forward? Well, if you're on page 138, you can follow along with me. Essentially, what we're going to work out is that the X here is being divided by 100, correct? Everybody there? Right here? X is divided by 100, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we need to find X. We need to find X. So in our case that we have a number, we're just looking for the unknown that we don't know. So we need to find X. To find it, you need to move that 100. To find it, we have to move that 100. Okay? That's the only thing stopping us from saying X is equal to something. Understand? So if X is being divided here, there's a rule in math that said that simply, if you want to get that 100 off of the X, you just move it over the equal sign. Everybody understand?
Yes, sir.
Right. Right. And let me quickly give you a visual to understand. So the way that you move it, or the term that we call it when you move values such as these, such as the 100, is transposition. The big word, again, is just math term, but you just simply say we're moving it. Getting it out of the house. It's 18 years old. It can move out now, right? So the rule is that if you have X dividing, if you have 100 dividing X, to get it off of the X, you do the opposite of what it's doing. Let me explain. If division is happening on the left, multiplication should be used to get rid of the value. And let's look at an example quickly. Right. If I told you that I have a half being multiplied by 2, right? A half being multiplied by 2. What is the answer for that? Anyone knows? 2 multiplied by a half.
1.
Right. Explain to me why you got 1.
Because 2 halves make.
Okay, right, correct. So let's replace that 2 now with 100. What if you had 100 multiplying